Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen. I'm joined by my usual broadcast partner, former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw, who played 11 seasons for the New York Rangers and Los Angeles Kings. This is the Laidlaw and Allen Report. We come to you twice a week to talk all things hockey, a little bit of cooking, a little bit about life. And Tom, before we start talking about the playoff race and who's going to play, I want to bring up a kind of a observation. It wasn't that long ago when you hear older people, and it seems like all they're talking about is what pills they're taking, their medical issues, their friends who have, become ill. And all of a sudden, in like the last month, I've run into, writers that I've known in the press box who've had medical issues. And then I thought, I really am old. I'm that guy now. I have all these conversations all the time with people about, oh man, I've been at the doctor. I've had this issue and that issue, and I think, holy cow! I think it's
more people around you. More people around you are old. You're not old.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's the way everyone always feels. Well, it's just not me. It's just all my friends.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the other thing, I thought this was interesting, and this was unscientific, but it was a guy just making a general observation that he thinks the people that have the most trouble growing old are the people who do the same stuff all the time. And I said, I'm doomed. I'm very much a routine guy. I like sports. I like watching television. I got 5 or 6 things I really like. I'm not branching out. I'm just doing the same stuff I've always done. So,
I do agree. You get sedentary, right? Or like a lot of people like this whole thing when you got to retire when you get to a certain age. Like, oh man, I got to keep moving. I think, but yeah. So, even our fancier Danny Erickson says, "I'm right with you, Kevin." So
yeah, exactly. Good. Yeah, but I certainly don't like sort of being that guy. But anyway, let's get started. I wanted to start with that Dallas Vegas game. We've talked a lot about Vegas. The fact that Jack Eichel's leadership is failing them. Apparently, they didn't get my letter because Mark Stone still answers for the team and Peter Angelo, and you never even hear anything from Jack Eichel. So I don't know, what's going on with Mark Stone that he hasn't realized that you think that Jack Eichel is in charge of that team.
It does take some time. They don't always pick up on it right away.
Yeah,
Duchesne in Nashville, it took a couple of years for him to realize that Tom was right and that he could play better.
Yeah, for sure. That that Eichel it's all about Eichel now that he's in Vegas. But despite all that, it was a good game yesterday, and I also think and I said this before we went on the air. We haven't really paid homage to the fact that these teams that are fighting to get in, like it feels like they're just hanging on, and But Dallas has played real well this season. There's a chance we're going to have at least 12 teams, I think, that have 100 points or more. And we might have 14 out of the 16 teams, I think, something like that.
So do we like that as a league then? Is that a good sign or not? Because that means if there's 12 teams with 100 points, there's a lot of teams at the bottom.
Yeah, I think there's 7 with fewer than 70. And I think the flat cap has had something to do with that, and the fact that it's been more difficult to change your teams. So I think the teams that are in the bottom are having a harder time, kind of climbing out of it during the pandemic. I think when the cap opens up a little bit, you'll be able to make more significant changes in your team. So, but I think the parity that we always talk about, and I don't think it's permanently lost, but I think it's temporarily lost.
Right. You do see a lot more teams. It seems like they're at that stage where they're regrouping with their team, right? They're getting rid of the older, expensive players, getting the young players. Arizona, clearly, they've got another agenda. They're going to regroup. Buffalo's regrouping. Detroit's doing the same thing. Ottawa's doing the same thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I heard another stat too, and it really took me by surprise. I'll just have you guess. The Pittsburgh Penguins have the longest current active playoff streak. I don't know how many it is, but it's I think it's in the teens that they've made the playoffs. But who's number 2?
The team that comes to mind right away is the Washington Capitals.
Yeah, that's a good guess, but that's not it. And I'll give you 3 guesses, but I'm saying this because it's really difficult. I would not have come up with this, although
Boston seems like it should be in there.
Yeah, it's not though.
Oh, wow. You know what?
Once I say it, you're going to go, yeah, that makes sense. But that doesn't easily come to mind.
Not Dallas.
No. It is the Nashville Predators at 8
really?
consecutive trips to the playoffs now. They backdoored in last night just because Vegas lost. So they're officially in now. But Vegas, still has an outside chance, but Dallas needs 1 point in their final 2 games.
Right. Right. So they got 2 games left, right? Yeah, 2 games left.
2 games left for Vegas, and Vegas actually has the tougher schedule. So any lost point for Vegas or any point gained by Dallas would put them in. And Dallas, I think, has Arizona and Anaheim. Right. And I know I know Vegas, I think, has to play St. Louis.
And they play Chicago next. So that's
Chicago. So that they should get 2 there. But St. Louis is is a good team now.
I guess the only thing with St. Louis, so they resting guys. They're in the playoffs, so they're going to rest some people. But but even then, you see that when you think, oh well, they're going to rest guys. The other guys that are coming in now, they're saying this is a good opportunity for me to show the coach I can play. So they're playing hard. Right?
Well, yeah, I mean, you want to say, well, it's just a slam dunk that Dallas is in, but Arizona smacked Minnesota yesterday, and Minnesota's a good team.
Yeah,
they are a good team. They, and that, sometimes there are statistics that kind of shock you. And when I remind people of this, they go, really? And that is Minnesota's 3rd in scoring in the NHL. Like,
that, what? I would not have guessed that. I guess I still view Minnesota as a boring team.
Yeah. Not with Kaprizov anymore, not Eriksson Ek has stepped up his game,
Did you see? Was it Kuznetsov with Washington have the shootout goal? On the way into the goaltender, he almost stops. He had to keep moving, obviously, because of the rules. But he's going really slow, and he takes his stick and does the twirl with the stick, flips it around in his hands, and then he goes in.
No, I didn't see that. Now, are you opposed to that, or?
Well, again, I acknowledge that I am old school with that kind of stuff. Now, today's game, you know what? The fans probably loved it, so it was great. But I mean, if somebody had done that when we were playing, I mean, they just wouldn't have done it because they would have been killed. I mean, people would go after them for doing it.
You would have give him the old 2-hander across the,
he would have ate the Sherwood Forest.
Yes, he would. He would have had reservations there. Dinner for 2 at Sherwood Forest. The other thing, speaking about Minnesota, Hartman has 34 goals. Now, like it's just such a strange world. Like, and I'm such a sports fan, but in baseball, nobody can score anymore. Right. It's batting averages are way down. And it's cold, so that does make a difference in terms of getting the ball to jump off the bat and so forth. But saying all that, a lot has to do with how the game has changed. And I heard someone say this morning that after the fifth inning, because they're bringing in so many relievers, it's like in the old days, baseball players would face a starter for at least 3 at bats. So, you learn each at bat, his style. Now it's like they're pinch hitters because you got a new pitcher in the 3rd and 4th at bat. So, all that changes in terms of, what's going on. But in hockey now, we have more scoring than we've had in 27 years. And guys that, that normally don't have high goal scoring totals suddenly have them, And I like that.
A lot of guys at the top end are getting 50, 60 goals now. Yeah, Matthews was 60 goals last night.
Yeah, we're jumping all around today, but I want to get into that too. That call that I just got, it was, I wanted to check on this. I don't know how I feel about this, but we've made a lot out of Austin Matthews being the first American 60-goal scorer. And like today on NHL Network, they did a graphic of first Canadian who was first Canadian 60-goal scorer.
Who was the first Canadian 60-goal
scorer? And again, this is hard too.
Esposito.
It is right on the money. That's a great guess. Yeah, I wouldn't have got that. I would have said just off the top of my head like Bossy or something. So, Finn, this is an easy one. First Finnish 60-goal scorer. Finnish.
Davis Line?
No. Before him.
Finnish.
Think Gretzky.
Oh, Curry. Yes.
Yeah, Curry. Yeah. Czech. Easy.
Stastny?
No. Greatest Czech player of all time.
Well, was Stan Mikita a Czech player?
Well, no. I mean, yes, he was born in Czech, but he, immigrated early, but
Right.
he's not considered Czech. You're just not thinking about it. It's Yager.
Oh, yes. I thought
Yeah.
it would be sooner than that. Okay,
Yeah. So Yager, and I'm trying to think who else they had in there.
Swedish player?
I don't think the Swede has had 60 goals.
Oh, wow.
So, but there was another country, and now I can't remember. Oh, it was
Russia?
Russia. Yeah, I don't remember who it was. Could have been Bure. Yeah, could have been. But anyway, I forgot where I was going. Oh, so we're going back. So, Matthews, first American player to score 60.
Right.
What about Brett Hull?
He didn't get
No.
60.
Well, he got 60, but he was born in Canada.
Oh.
But we sure count him as an American. He has dual citizenship because his mother is very American.
Right.
And
he played for the U.S. in the Olympics and everything, too.
He has committed still lives, like, since he moved here in college and went to Minnesota Duluth, he's pretty much been an American. I don't know how I feel about that. I know that I've played fast and loose, too, because, what you say is, American born versus American, because it's kind of goofy. The NHL always uses where you're born at,
right,
for their distinction, and I think that's what we're doing here. But I don't know. So I'm gonna call and talk to USA Hockey and see how they feel about it.
And Brett certainly drinks American beer too. He likes American beer. So
yeah, although I think he likes Molson's.
Oh, does he? I'm sure he likes all the brands.
Yeah. Canadian Club. I think he'd be more partial to Canadian Club.
He's a Canadian Club guy. He might be now. Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyway, so I think that's kind of interesting. It's not a big deal either way, and I don't think Brett or Austin is losing any sleep over it. But anyway, another fun thing. Yes. I wrote about this today or yesterday. I ended up writing the story. I never get out of the newspaper mold, even though we don't even have newspapers, of thinking whatever I wrote yesterday is for today.
Right.
I wrote it yesterday. It was for yesterday. And the thing is, you know how it is. When you go to Toronto and you're a hockey player, you got to expect more media there. It's for a morning skate. I always loved going there because there was a buzz in the air and there'd be 40 reporters milling about. There's a large delegation of Canadian reporters, and Moritz Seider was coming in. Of course, there's a lot of discussion about Red Wings rookie Moritz Seider, right, because he can win Rookie of the Year, and they in Toronto, the Maple Leaf writers are covering Michael Bunting, who is also in that race. So there's plenty to discuss. So they come in and they ask Moritz Seider. He said, what's it mean to you that you could win the Calder Trophy as Rookie of the Year? Did I say Norris before? I didn't mean to. If I did,
no, you said Calder.
Yeah, okay. Calder Trophy as Rookie of the Year, and they said, what does it mean to you? And Seider said, nothing, not a thing. He said, I don't think about it, and he said, I'm interested in the team and getting better, and the thing about it is sometimes, when players say that, they're not really that. I believe him. I believe he doesn't give any thought to that. Like, that's not his thing. Trying to win the
I can see that.
the Calder Trophy as Rookie of the Year. But I thought, boy, what a candid interview, because I think it kind of shocked some people because they sort of follow that up. Like, you don't even think about all the great players that's won it. And he goes, yeah, I've seen the list, but I got to tell you, it's really not that important to me.
See, I love that.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, I loved it too.
Yeah, because you think his team's not playing well right now. He's defenseman. They've been blown out in a lot of games. He's played fantastic. I haven't seen all his games, but the stuff I see from him is incredible. But he's not hung up on his individual awards. He's hung up on the team. That's a great sign. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's not lost on people and why I think he'll win is he's a full service player.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
He blocks shots.
Yep.
He's physically intimidating. He leads his team in hits. He leads his team in block shots. He's the number one power play guy. Yep. He's got more assists than most of the defensemen in the league, and he's 20 years old.
Right.
He's he's just automatically the best player on the Red Wings.
Totally.
You know,
Who does,
like,
what former player does he remind you of?
Well,
It's kind of a hard one. Same size, same side shooting, your right shot, defensive, big guy, hits. You know, he's famous for the big hit with the big. He'd stick his butt in there and hit everybody. Rob Blake.
Yeah. Not as thick as Rob, and hasn't mastered the hip check. Like as Rob once, I did a story. Actually, it was a book. It was called Crunch, about the physical side of hockey, and I interviewed Rob Blake about his hip check, and he started laughing. He goes, you know, guys said that, you know, when I sort of bend over, and he said, guys tell me, I see that big butt of yours coming at me, and he says, it's like you're locked on, like I can't, you know, it just keeps coming, and I can't get away from it. Like, he had it down.
Yeah, he's such a good skater too, right? Because that's a risky move as a defenseman. If you miss the guy, then he's going the other way. But he didn't miss. I don't recall him ever missing. He was pretty good. Yeah.
I like that comparison. You know, as I said, the physical build's a little off just because Rob was pretty thick, but he wasn't. He got thicker as he, you know, as we all do, as you get older. But
and how speaking of the Rob Blake too, the Kings make the playoffs too. I didn't suspect. I thought they were doing some good stuff there, but I didn't think they make the playoffs quite yet. That's
they were in my preseason pick to make it. I thought they were headed in the right direction. They made some off-season moves. Speaking of Rob Blake, you know, getting Arvidsson I think was important. You know, they added another goal scorer too that escapes me, but they picked up a couple of guys that could put the puck in the net. And I think that was good. And what's interesting is they have really the best collection of prospects, and really we haven't even seen those guys yet.
True.
You know, I mean, not to any great extent. So, you know, they could be good in a couple of years. You know, there's no doubt about that. But another team I want to get back to talk about the Predators, because, you know, I've sort of let you off the hook a little bit, and that's not so unlike me.
Yes.
On Matt Duchene. Have you been following Matt this year?
I have not been following, but I understand that he has done much better. He's playing much harder.
How many goals do you think Matt has?
I'm going to say 32.
42.
Ooh, does he really?
Yeah. Had a pretty good year.
Right.
Had a pretty good year.
So are we happy for him, or are we more critical of why didn't you do this the past 2 or 3 years then? Why?
Well, I mean, I think if I'm mad and he was here, I'd say to you, you know, I never told you how to play defense, so why are you telling me how to play forward? You know,
I can see effort or lack of effort.
Yeah, no, I mean, and to, you know, even though I'm having some fun with you, I understand your criticism of him, because I think it's the same criticism that the Predators had of him. Yeah. Like, you know, and you know, he has been a major disappointment. Yeah. But you know, this is what I wanted to talk about. And on a more serious note, do we think he just decided he didn't care, didn't want to play, and this year he did? Like, why does that happen? Like, why does a guy who, you know, came over and you know, because this wasn't one season, this was a couple seasons, and then this year, did he wake up on a Tuesday, scratch himself, and say, you know what, I think I'm going to really be good this year?
Well, I'm going to use another player, Chris Kreider. Not to say I don't think the same thing went on. I think Chris Kreider's always been a very hard worker, but he's been very inconsistent in the past. This year, now he's got 52 goals. And what's the similarities between two new coaches? Well, I mean, they had the new coach there in Nashville before, but has the coach finally got to Duchene and said, "Listen, we need to get more of you"? Did he work with him and get him going more? Did he point out the things he could do more? Chris Kreider clearly has shown that he can do much more. I think he showed that before. Now it's finally paid off in goals for them. I just think sometimes players, and I can do this myself. Early in my career, I'll never forget the great Frank Brown, that you know very well. He's writing with the Daily News here in New York, and he wrote a scathing article about me, how bad I was playing. And I was pouting like a little baby, like, what are you talking about? I'm not playing bad. I just didn't see how I was playing. Once he pointed it out to me, and I started watching myself more, I said, yeah, I am not playing as well as I can. So I think sometimes players don't see, like Chris Kreider is a fantastic player, great team player, works very hard off the ice, is a leader, all that kind of stuff. But I honestly believe that in the past, he didn't see how inconsistent he was. He seemed to be happy with his game. Now I think he's seen that he can get much more out of his game. And I don't know Duchene. I don't watch them all that much. But I got the feeling it's the same way. He was probably sitting there saying, well, they gave me this big contract. I must be doing what I should be doing. Now he's realizing, for whatever reason, that he can get much more out of his game. again, I just don't think players always see the way they're playing.
But how could he not know? I mean, his goal totals were down. No, I'm just asking this, because I don't really know. His goal totals were down. They were on him all the time. Like he got his ice time reduced in the playoffs. Are you telling me he didn't know that he wasn't playing well?
Excellent point by you. That is correct. I mean, your goal total, but again, it's the same thing with Kreider. I mean, he showed so much potential when he started off. His goal totals were okay, but it wasn't like he was getting the 50-goal seasons like he's got now. I just think that sometimes you don't see. But again, you're right. In Duchesne's case, where he was getting his ice time taken away from him, and the goal totals were down. Yeah. But did the contract status have something to do with it? He signed the big long-term contract. He now was, he was set financially. Was he complacent? I mean, it does happen to players where you go through stages in your career where you do become, you're all excited and work so hard to get to the National Hockey League. You play so well early, and then you kind of get complacent and say, okay, I've made the National Hockey League. Now I can kind of put it on cruise control a little bit. And that's the difference between the good players and the great players, right? Wayne Gretzky, he didn't want to just play in the National Hockey League. He wanted to be the best player that ever played the National Hockey League. I don't know Duchesne. Again, I don't know what his motivation is. I see that he's a tremendous and talented player. There seemed to be some issues way back going to Colorado that he wasn't the best character player. Some of the comments, you see Patrick Waugh made some comments about some of the actions that when he was coaching Colorado and Duchesne was there. Again, is that immaturity? Is he finally growing up? Is he finally realized, geez, I haven't got much left in my career here. I want to get more out of my career. I hear you where he should have seen it and why didn't it happen earlier? But sometimes players just get complacent.
Yeah, I do think, though, that we don't pay homage to that some things are just out of your control. Like, let's talk about Wayne Gretzky, for example. We know how hard he worked to be the best. Yep. And yet, he didn't score. Once he got to 215 points, he didn't continue to score 215 points.
Right.
And, as he moved on, like he was still, in theory, in his prime years, and, he was only getting 150. So does that mean his effort wasn't there? Did the game change? Did the circumstances change? Like, I think it's a lot more complicated than we want to make it. There's just so many things going on that, effort is important, but I think sometimes circumstances, who you're playing with, how good your team is.
And how people learn to play against. Like in Wayne's case, we learned, I was one of the people, I learned to play against Wayne differently. Like carrying the puck out of my own zone, I realized if Wayne's on the ice, move it now because he's coming to get you from behind. And he gets in his office behind the net there. We learned how to play that better. We would overplay it and have two guys go after him. That's what he wanted. The little turn up he would make going inside the blue line. One person go to him. Don't get mesmerized by him. Those are all. It's amazing to see that because as much as we would talk about it before the game, especially when we were in New York and he was in Edmonton, we didn't see him that often. For me as a defenseman, I was getting all keyed up to play against Wayne, and I would overplay it at first. Now, once you played against him for a while, then you relax and realize, okay, yes, he's a great player, but don't overplay the situation. You just do what you normally do against any other player. So,
it is interesting though. I don't remember what your playing time was. They didn't really keep track of it until later in your career. But I would guess you were a 20-minute player. You didn't have much. Herb didn't give you much power play time.
Right. So I was probably a 23-minute guy. Yeah, depending on the situation in the game.
Right. 23 minutes. And in sports, we expect we as fans, because coaches talk about consistency. We love to see players every day, every game, play at the same level of consistency. And in sports, especially in hockey, where you're limited in the actual amount of time you are in the arena competing. Forwards, some of them, not very many of them, actually hit 20 minutes in a game. Just only a handful. So we're asking athletes to play at their highest levels, their highest compete levels, with a high degree of consistency for 82 games for 20 minutes of competition during that time. So when we talk about it in those terms, we think that's not asking much. Just push it. But what we don't do is compare that in our regular life. I don't care what you do for a living. If you're a fireman, you're a policeman, you're a physician, you're a surgeon, you work in an auto garage, you're a mechanic, you're never the same every day. I don't care what it is, a writer, everything else. I don't know anybody. Like, you have better days, and you whatever you do, you come home and say, "Boy, I had a good day today."
Yeah,
I
sure.
got things accomplished, and none of us have that level of consistency. So why do we expect that from athletes? Now I get that it's a small deal, but it's over 3 hours, and there's a lot of pressure. So I don't know. I guess my question is, are expectations too high in that regard in terms of level of consistency? Because nobody has that level of consistency in any work area.
Yeah, I don't think the expectations are too high as far as fans and coaches. They want to push the players to be the best every day. The fans, Ranger fans are diehard Ranger fans. They want the team to play well every game.
Yeah,
I think and what comes across is they're mad at the team if they don't. I don't think that the fans are mad. They want them to play well. Then they'll play the next game when they're playing better. I heard John Muckler say one time on this topic, he said, if you can get the players to play at their top 75% of the time in the National Hockey League, that's pretty good. Like that's the average. That's what you're going to get out of guys.
No, that's interesting. I never heard that. Okay. Yeah. Now that seems more realistic to me.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's accurate too. And it's weird too, because I don't know if I can really put my finger on it, but like confidence is such a big thing. And I don't know, you could be going along playing totally confident, like sometimes I pass the puck and I could put it on a dime where I wanted to. And other times I couldn't put it in the ocean when I was trying to pass the puck sometimes. And I don't know why that confidence came and went. And once it did, it was hard to get the confidence back again. I do think I've learned since then, it's probably more, not that maybe an athlete isn't working hard, but when he gets in that slump where things aren't going well for him, I do believe that it's just you've got to work harder at it. There's no secret sauce to getting your confidence back. You just got to work harder at your craft. Get out there before practice more, stay out after practice. So you're working at it. So it's kind of like you give yourself a license to be confident because you've done the work. You've done the work. That's my opinion. And again, it just doesn't happen overnight. But then it's amazing how you can lose your confidence too. So.
Yeah, I mean, and you wouldn't think that would happen only because, to become a good athlete, you have to be almost cocky.
Yeah,
you have to believe you're the best player out there.
Right. But sometimes it's not totally the truth. The athlete may give off the perception that he's almost cocky, but deep down inside, his mind is saying, "Oh God," because I remember getting in the National Hockey League for me. Looking back, it was funny. I shouldn't have been like this, but I was so in awe of the other NHL players. If I was to do it all over again, and things I get into now, I guess because I've got more experience in things, I respect people when I'm going to do things, but that doesn't mean that I'm in awe of them. I don't grovel to anybody. I respect them for who they are. So if I was to do it again, going to the National Hockey League, I would respect Phil Esposito. I'd respect Barry Beck when I came to training camp, but I wouldn't be sitting there in awe of them. And I guess, deep down inside, like I tell the story about how I, hit Phil Esposito in a scrimmage like day 2 of training camp. So I guess I wasn't that much of him. Maybe that was just more of a reaction. But it is amazing how that confidence is such a big thing.
I want to ask you this too. Team morale. Mm-hmm. It's kind of intertwined a little bit with your confidence, team morale. And in Detroit, Jeff Blashill, who's on the hot seat, and I think most people believe that he'll be removed after the season. But he likes to pull his goalie early when this team is behind. The days of in the final minute are over for all coaches. But he'll pull that goalie with 2:50 left. Yeah. As a result, the Red Wings set a new NHL record this year for empty net goals. I think it's minus, there's 50 some of them, I think. Okay, right. It's something like that. There's a lot of them. So they would give up, it's not uncommon for them to give up 2 empty net goals in a game, Now, my question is, and just to give you an example of the impact that has, Moritz Seider is minus 10 this year. Right. But my colleague, Bob Duff, went and figured out that he's been on the ice for 22 empty net goals. So he would be plus 12 if they didn't pull their goalie. Right. So my question to you as a player, even though a loss is a loss, regardless of what you lose by, is it a little demoralizing that, you instead of losing 3-1, you're losing 5-1? And it looks to all the world when they look at the stats that you guys were just awful, and really you might have been okay in that game. Not great because you didn't win, but
I think particularly in Detroit's case, I'm with you. I think it is demoralizing more because they've had a number of games where they've lost 9-2 and 7-1 and stuff like that. And I see what Blaswell's doing. I like the attitude. Listen, anything to win, right? We want to show the young guys you do anything to try to win. That's true. But especially now in a time where it used to be where coaches would teach the players, don't try to shoot for the empty net until you get to the red line. We don't want to take the icing. Now the analytics tell you that that's not the case. As soon as you get the puck in your own zone, shoot for it. The numbers bear out that you're better to try to shoot for the empty net, even if you have to take the icing, because now it's another face-off in your own zone. So at a time where people are really changing their attitude, now players are shooting all the time from their own zone all the way down the other end of the ice to try to score. To pull your goalie that early, man.
Yeah. Well, you know, the other element too, that it's so difficult. I'm very sympathetic to athletes on this. You know, I was watching the Tigers game. Actually, I didn't see it. I was watching hockey, but I saw it on replay this morning. The Tigers lost in the last inning because the catcher, Haas, was in a rundown and just flipped the ball to the third baseman. They had two Minnesota Twins standing on third. So, you know, he did what you're supposed to do. He ran him back. And then, you know, it was a little throw he had to make, and he threw it and just lobbed it. And he lobbed it over the third baseman's head. It went into left field. Twins got 2 runs. They won the game. And the reaction on social media was, and it was just what I talked about yesterday, what a moron.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what a moron. Now, here's my question to fans. Like, do you really believe that he didn't know what play to make? He didn't know how to throw it? Or did he just screw up?
Yeah.
You know, did he make a mistake? It's just so amazing. Like, do you think he wanted to do that?
Well,
you know,
in baseball when there's 162 games, right? I mean, it's if that's 75% number still bears true. Obviously, when you're doubling the schedule, there's even more games where you're not going to be on top of your game. Yeah, I agree. That is part of sports. It's part of life. People make mistakes all the time, right? I mean, you and I are perfect, but that's about it.
No, well, and you know, I've told people before, we all make mistakes except mine are in print. So they're hanging out there, you know, for all to see. I was doing a draft list for someone just in the last week, and there was a Slovak name, and instead of it was Nimic, and I used an I-C instead of an EC, even though the second time I did it, I had it right. So I don't know what I was thinking, you know, I think. And the guy just got all over me, and he said, you know, in your business, you know, you need to be more careful with people's names. And I wanted to say, but I didn't. Do you think I don't know that? Or do you think I really am careless all the time? Or do you think I just screwed up?
It kind of gets to like, okay, people are getting that upset over a spelling issue.
Yeah.
It's something with them, right? It's more their
issue. I think people do enjoy pointing out errors because I think it makes them feel good. Like I wouldn't do that, you know. So this guy,
I noticed that with my cooking show sometimes. Like somebody will make a comment like, "Well, you should have done this, you should have done that," and I go, "What? I'm cooking. I'm having fun cooking, you know." But you're right.
Yeah, you're not cooking. You're not out there showing us the, you know, stuff. So I mean, like give the people credit for being out, you know, trying to do it. So
I agree totally. Yeah, like some guy, I was at a game one time as after it was on Survivor, and the guy was kind of like, "Oh, yeah, you can vote out 5th overall, or whatever." And I said, "Well, what couch were you sitting on while I was out there playing FIFA, right?"
Yeah, you're sitting on your couch, and I'm all out there, you know.
That's a good question here. Did Bob ever take a look at how many goals Detroit scored with the empty net when they pulled the goalie?
Yeah, he did, but it wasn't enough. You know, to really make it worthwhile. They did score. I think they came back in a couple of games, but you know, not very often.
It is interesting, right? Because as much as we over the generations of hockey, that has become a standard play. Like you have to pull your goalie at some point if you're down goals, but it usually doesn't work out for the team that pulls the goalie, right?
I'm sorry, I just got
okay. What I was saying was that we've all believed, and even me when I'm coaching, believe that when you're down by a goal or too late in the game, you should pull your goalie. But it doesn't very often work out. Though.
No, but I think you should do it. I mean, I would never say that. I'm just saying, do you do it as early as you should, and do you stick with it? You know, like if you've given up one, do you then raise the white flag? Yeah. Because it's hard.
That is the danger then, right? If you keep the goalie out and you let in one, then you're saying, okay, I give up, right? As a coach, I give up.
Well, it's a hard question because, you know, like you said, you don't ever want to say that we don't have any chance.
Right.
On the other hand, you know, you leave yourself more vulnerable. And I think there is some level it's a demoralizing thing to keep giving up goals. You see people they're hanging their heads and
right. And you know what I think too, like part of it is recognizing how well your team is playing. Are they on a roll? Like if they're getting something going, then let's add more fuel to the fire. Let's pull that goaltender because these guys are working hard. We've almost scoring goals here. But if the team's totally out of it, they're just not generating any scoring chances. Then I think, come on, it's just not going to happen. I mean, you can't do that, but.
Well, that's, one of the great dilemmas. Teams that have to pull their goalies, they're not teams that control the puck very well because they're behind.
Yes.
So, and if the team is beating you 3-1, they're probably better with the puck than you. And, they're going to get it. And, they're going to
score. Playoffs start. So last game, regular season games, what, Friday or this weekend?
Yeah, Monday they start already.
Monday start.
So you don't have much time to get your playoff beard.
Well, that's right too. Yes, we'll stick with the beard. Yes.
Yeah. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the Tampa Bay Lightning. I've told you they haven't been playing well, but whenever you say that, you got to cue up the argument of whether teams can turn it off and on.
Yep.
Well, they've turned it on. They've won a few games in a row, including beating Florida. Although I would say that 8-4 win, pointed out how dangerous Florida really is. I mean, they lost, but they scored 4 goals.
Yep.
I
think that's more. See, to me, that more with that. I was going to say it means a lot more to Florida because they're not as experienced at winning. But I do think it's a little bit of a statement game for Tampa. So as it sits right now, then with the standings, Florida at the top spot with most points is going to play Washington. So that means that Carolina is going to play Boston. So it's Toronto and Tampa in the first round.
Yeah. I mean, that's no fun for Toronto, but to be honest with you, as a fan, I'm sick of Toronto, Boston. I don't want to see that anymore.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah.
So let's mix that up. I think that'll be a good series. A lot of goals.
So the issue is going to be what Toronto's goaltending and their defense. Right? Are they good enough to handle?
Yeah.
I think what's that, Kev?
I think their defense is better. I mean, you pointed out that you really like Giordano, and I think he's been a good addition for them. So,
because Vasilevsky, you're pretty much certain Vasilevsky's going to play well in net for.
Yeah, you would hope. Although, would you not agree that he's been ordinary? Like, I mean, his numbers are still good. He's like 916 save percentage, but like this year, we weren't talking about games he stole and all that. And for as much struggle as Tampa Bay had to stretch, they won 50 games.
Yeah, I know.
What am I talking about? They're not playing well.
I do think it's a case where the Islanders were like this too. Like once they started winning their cups and they won 4 in a row, they weren't always the best team during the regular season. They just knew how to win. And I think Tampa's in that category, right? That you now can say, people say, well, you can't turn it on and off. Well, you can, especially if you're a team that's won like that, you can turn it on and off. Here's a good question here too. Tom, if you were on the Rangers team, would you rather rest the last 2 games of play? I thought Jared Glunt should have started resting players before last night. I hated resting. I get the argument. You don't want guys to get hurt. I understand that whole thing. God forbid somebody gets hurt. Like Chris Kreider gets hurt or Zibanejad or whatever. But I just, for me as a player, I think I've told the story. So the first year I played every game in the regular season, every game in the playoffs. Second year, Herb Brooks came in. He rested me the last game of the year. Now, it didn't affect me. It wasn't like I played bad after that, but I wanted to keep playing.
Yeah.
And he did that my 4th year, I think, too, where he didn't play me the last game, whatever. I almost thought it was kind of pointless. When I rest, I still skated at practice. It's not like I'm home in bed, sleeping 24 hours a day. So, but again, having said that, if somebody gets hurt.
As a guy who's covered the league 37 years and interviewed lots of players on this subject, most players feel as Tom do. They would rather just keep playing. They do understand they don't want to risk injury in a meaningless game, and they understand the argument, but they don't feel like what's not playing a game going to do.
Yeah,
especially top players who's feel like, well, I could get 3 points in a game. So,
totally. Especially like the playoffs aren't packed together like they used to be. We used to play back to back. We'd play like on a Friday, Saturday, day off, and then go to the other team's rink and play 2 games again. You're playing back to back games. It's not like that anymore. They spread it out more, so it's not like you're resting because you're going to have this terrible schedule. Now the games are typically harder, so yeah, they're harder to play those games, but you still have rest. So
Yeah, it is interesting because in the last couple of CBAs, there's been a lot of discussion. Like, there's a lot of guaranteed days off built in now that you have to give players so many days off. But I find in talking to players, they're not talking about getting those days off to rest. They're talking about just having days off so they can do something. They can go golfing, or they can hang out with their families, or whatever they want to do. They want days off just like we want days off. Like, when you get a day off from work, you're not saying, well, I want to rest because I've worked 7 days a week and everything else. I'm going to just sit on my couch. And no, you want to do something. You want to go to the movies. You want to go out and dancing or whatever it is you do. And I think players are the same way. So,
well, back when the Islanders were winning all their cups, they stayed in a hotel all the time, even at home.
Well, you do that still today. Like,
the team's still doing that. It's just
yes, they do. Yeah. They bring them in, and they still do that. So
I get, listen, I can't argue with what the Islanders did, but I just never, I don't know. But I guess if you got young kids at home, you're trying to take a nap and a pregame nap or something like that. But
when we know how important those naps are, I think
they were back then. They were the minds.
Well, because you were there out till 3 o'clock in the morning the night before. So,
this is true. Very true. You
can't very true. Anyway, I think this is a pretty interesting show, and I hope you enjoyed it. Anyway, we'll be back next week. We'll be into the playoffs then. We'll still probably make our predictions, even though we'll probably have had the benefit of watching a game or two.
Right.
Now you stay up late. I know you get up early, but you still stay up late for the games, right?
Definitely during the playoffs. Yeah.
Yeah. No, remember our rules. No complaining about having to go to work after. That's all of you out there. You got to
sleep is overrated.
Watch your hockey and then go to work. You're just like players. You got to push through. So
sleep in the summer. Yes.
Yeah, sleep in the summer. All right. And if you want to read me, I'm at DetroitHockeyNow.com and HockeyBuzz.com.
And if you want to listen to the radio version of this show, you can go to radio.co at 365 Sports. Again, that's radio.co at 365 Sports. We'll see everybody on Monday.